Hello everyone, welcome to day one of Splunk and AWS. Today we are going to talk about how to install Splunk on AWS. So the agenda for today is installation of Splunk on AWS, of Splunk on AWS. Okay, so what we are going to do today is we are going to create a new Splunk instance on an AWS machine. So if you have watched my last class, in that class, I have specifically mentioned how do you create an AWS instance from scratch. Okay, so we are going to continue from that part. And now I'm going to tell you how do you install Splunk on an AWS machine. So just to give a heads up of what we have discussed last time. So this was the instance that we spin up last time. The name of the instance is Splunk underscore Linux. This was the first instance that we created in our last class. And we are going to use this instance and we are going to install Splunk on AWS. Okay, so let's start. So the first thing is I need to connect this instance, right? I need to connect this instance with PuTTY. So if I just click on this checkbox of this instance, what I can see is this is the public IP of this instance. So now what I'm going to do is first, I'm going to log into this instance via PuTTY. Once I have logged into this instance, I'm going to install Splunk on this particular instance. So in order to log into this instance, as we all know, we have used PuTTY, right? So in the PuTTY, it requires a few things. The first thing that the PuTTY require is the IP address. So here we are going to use the public IP address. When I click on this part, it is going to copy the public IP address. So now I'm going to log into PuTTY. When I log into PuTTY, this would be my public IP address. And in order to log in, we just don't need the IP address. We also need the key pair. So we have created a key pair when we were actually creating this instance. And now we are going to use the same key pair in order to log into this instance. So I'll click on this SSH. I'm going to click on the authentication in the credentials tab, and I'm going to browse that key pair. So this key pair is the same key pair when we created the instance, we created this key pair. Why do we need this key pair? We would need this key pair in order to authenticate to the remote AWS instance. Okay, so it's you can consider this key pair as a user ID and password. And using the user ID and password, you can actually authenticate to the instance. So let me browse the key pair that we have. So this was the key pair. I'm going to now browse it. I'm now going to open it and let me click on open. So now it will ask me to accept. I'll definitely go and accept it. I'm going to, the username would be ec2-user. If you are thinking how this ec2-user came into picture, let me show you quickly. So this ec2-user, if you just see this part, just a minute, please. If I have to click on this instance once again, if I click on the connect of this instance, what you see is the username for this instance is ec2-user. We have not defined any custom name. That's why we are using ec2-user while connecting as well. Okay, so I have now connected. I have now logged into this instance. How to verify that you have logged in correctly to this instance? You see this private IP. So here, this is the user, ec2-user. At the rate, there is this IP. Now let me validate if this IP is of the same instance that I have connected. So what I can do here is I can just quickly go back, click on the instance, and let me validate with the private IP of this instance. Okay, so let this instance start. It is taking some time, so let's wait for a minute, please. I can, if it is not working, I can just, okay, now it came up. Okay, so if you see what is the private IP of this instance is 172.30.119.105. And if you see on the PuTTY, the private IP of the instance is 172.30.119 and 105. So this private IP is same as this private IP. So I can say I have successfully logged into my Splunk Linux instance. Okay, now what do I need to do now? Once I have logged into my Splunk Linux instance, I'll have to download and install Splunk. So before downloading and installing Splunk, as of now, I have logged in as EC2 user. I will switch to remote to the super user or the root user here with the command sudo su. So sudo is a command that is used to switch to a specific user, and su is the super user. So when I type sudo su, what happens is it will move from EC2 user to a root user. As you can see, earlier it was a EC2 user. Now it has become a root user. Okay. So now I have logged in as a root user and I'm going to install Splunk as a root user. In organizations generally, we don't install Splunk via root user, but since I'm just explaining how do you use AWS EC2 instances to install Splunk, I can go ahead with my root user account as this is just the test credentials. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I have logged in to this putty via root user. Now I need to first download Splunk. So what are the steps if you talk about? The steps if you want to install Splunk is the first step is you need to download Splunk. Okay. So how do you download Splunk? And once you download Splunk, you need to install Splunk as well. Okay. Install Splunk as well. So let me first go through the first step of how we are going to download Splunk. In order to download Splunk, what we are going to do is we are going to go to a website called splunk.com. Okay, so this is the website which has all the Splunk versions, and you can download any specific version from the splunk.com. So let me quickly go to the splunk.com and I can show you the details later. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to splunk.com. Now, when I go to the splunk.com, if I want to download any Splunk software, I need to have a user account. If I don't have a user account on Splunk.com, I would not be able to download any of the Splunk trial licenses. Okay, so in order to create the user account, you can click on this sign up. When you see this people tab or this people icon, you can click on the sign up. There would be a small form that would be coming in. You can fill up this form. This is the small form. If you see, you can fill this up, and once you fill this up, it will ask you to validate your credentials over email. So basically, when whatever email you are typing it here, right, you'll once you fill this form, you'll get a link over this email, and once you validate or verify the link, you would be able to log into this splunk.com. Since I already have the credentials, I'm not going to go through that process. Let me log into this splunk.com. So when I click on login to the splunk.com, the first step that I'm going to do is I'm going to write the credentials. So whatever is the credentials here, I'm going to use the credentials. This is my credentials and I'm going to use it. This is going to be my credentials. Okay. And I would log into the splunk.com. And after logging into the splunk.com, I am going to download Linux. I'm going to download Splunk, sorry. Okay. So in order to download Splunk, you'll have to click on this products. There is something called products. There is something called free trial and downloads. You'll have to click on this free trial and downloads. Once you click on the free trial and downloads, there are specific things here. You see, there is Splunk Cloud Platform, Splunk Enterprise Platform, Universal Forwarder. As of now, since we need to install Splunk, we are going to use the Splunk Enterprise, and I'm going to click on get my free trial. Okay, we are downloading a free trial of Splunk, which would be valid for 60 days, and it doesn't need anything. But after 60 days, you would not be able to use all the features of Splunk, as this trial license will expire and you will be having a free license, which does not have all the features like alerting and other things. Okay, so you can click on get my free trial here. Once you click on get my free trial, there would be a lot of machine types or the operating system types. Okay, you can select whether you are using Windows, Linux, or Mac operating system. As of now, this EC2 machine that I have here is an Amazon Linux machine. Okay, this is an Amazon Linux machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Linux tab and I'm going to download this TGZ file. So in order to download this TGZ file, I'm just going to click on this wget link. So wget is a Linux command that is used in order to download anything on Linux. Okay, so by default, this wget is available here. So we can just copy this in our AWS instance. We will go to first. Okay, so once I have copied the wget, with the wget, I can download Splunk. But where we are going to download Splunk in our EC2 machine? This is my EC2 machine. Where I'm going to download Splunk? In order to download Splunk, I'm going to change the directory to OPT. Okay, so this is the directory where I'm going to go. I'm going to just right click. Once I right click, immediately this wget command get pasted and I'm going to click on enter. Okay, once you click on enter, this download will start. So what I have done at this point in time is first I went into the EC2 machine as a root user. I went to this OPT directory. In the OPT directory, whatever wget link I was getting from splunk.com, I've just pasted it by right clicking on it. And what is going to happen once you right click is the download will start. How can you check whether the downloads has finished? Is you see it says that this TGZ or the this star file or the you can say zipped version is already saved. How can I check it? I can run ls and I would be able to see that, okay, I do have this tgz file with me. Okay, so once this tgz file is there, that means the download part is completed, but we are yet supposed to install Splunk. So in order to install Splunk, the best way is to untar this file. Okay, and how to unzip or untar this file? There is a command in Linux which called tar-xvzf. If I click, if I just run tar-xvzf and copy this tgz file, it's going to untar it. Okay, so how to copy this file? I'm going to double click on it, and again how to paste it? I'm going to right click on it. So when I type tar-xvzf, because I had to copy, I have double clicked, and I have to paste, so I have right clicked on it. Okay, so once I do this part, the extraction is going to start. Okay, the extraction is going to start off like this. Okay, so let the extraction end, and I'm going to show you exactly what are the next steps that we are supposed to do. Okay, so this extraction is going to take some amount of time, as all the packages that are there in the tar, all the files that are there in the tar will get extracted one by one. And once it is extracted, you will see a Splunk folder that would be created. I'm just going to show you that in a minute. So let's wait for a minute until the extraction is over. Okay, so as you see that there are so many files that it is definitely going to take some time. Now the extraction is definitely over. If I want to clear the screen, I'll just type clear, so that because I already have a lot of things on my screen, I'm just going to clear the screen first of all, and then I'm going to show you that the extraction has been successful. So I'm running ls, which is going to list out all the contents inside this opt folder. Whatever is the content inside this opt folder will come up with, under the ls, when we write the ls command. Now you see what has happened is when we untarred this tgz file, what has happened is a Splunk folder has got created. Okay, so the untarring has been already done, but I still need to start off the Splunk service. The Splunk is not completely installed, right? I need to start the Splunk service. Now, before starting off with the Splunk service, the first thing that I need to take care is that there are certain ports. Okay, I cannot install, or the Splunk would not be working properly if certain ports are not available. There are few ports. Okay, actually there are exactly 4 ports that Splunk looks for, and if these 4 ports are opened, then Splunk installation would be proper. Okay, you need to open 4 ports. So basically you need to open 4 ports. What are the 4 ports that you need to open? First is 8000. 8000 is nothing but the web port in which you can see the GUI of Splunk. There is 8089, which is called the management port, on which the Splunk D service runs. So if you want to know about Splunk D, we are going to talk about in the other videos. Okay, there is 8065, which is called the app server port. We can discuss about this app server port in detail as well in the upcoming sessions. And there is one port called for 8191, which is nothing but the KV store port. So these are the 4 ports that should be opened before I actually start or install Splunk. So I need to open all these 4 ports on this AWS machine. So I have this AWS instance. On this particular AWS instance, I need to make sure that all the 4 ports are opened. So in order to open these 4 ports, what I'm going to do is I have already clicked on this. Okay, so I'm going to go to the security groups. In the security groups, there is something called, if you see this, this is the security group. Okay, if I click on the security group, okay, there are 2 things. One is called inbound rules, another is called outbound rules. Okay, this is the inbound and this is the outbound. Inbound rules means uh, from wherever the traffic is coming. Okay, inbound means the traffic is incoming to this machine. So if the traffic should be coming on these 8000 and other ports, so I'm going to open these ports. Okay, so I'm going to edit the inbound rules. I'm going to edit the inbound rules, and I'm going to add a rule. Okay, so since this is the first time when we are installing, I am not opening any specific port. as I have mentioned that this is the test instance, I'm going to open all the ports for it because anyways, I'm just showing how to install Splunk. So I'm going to click here, all traffic, and here I will select all anywhere IPv4. That means any from anywhere, from any port. If the connection is coming to this machine from any port, from any IP address, if it is coming from any IP address on any port range, it will allow it. Okay. You can select specific ports as well. But at this point in time, we are going with the all traffic and anywhere. In the later videos, we can talk about how do you open a specific port if you need so. Okay. So I'm going to save this inbound rule. Now, when I save this inbound rule, as I mentioned, that any kind of traffic from any IPv4 from any IP, from any IPv4 in any port. So if the traffic is coming from any of the IP address, okay, and on any of the port, it would be allowed. So I'm going to save this rule. Okay. So now the prerequisite for Splunk was that these four ports should be opened. Since I've opened all the ports, I am good with it. Okay. So what I can do is now I can start off with the Splunk installation again. So let's go to the putty. Okay. Now if I want to install Splunk, first I'll go to the CD Splunk. I'm actually I have actually untarred the Splunk instance, but I've not still started the Splunk service. So I'm going to start off with the Splunk service. I'm going to type cd Splunk. When I type cd Splunk and when I click on ls, there is a directory called bin directory. So in order to run any of the commands in Splunk, we are always supposed to go to the bin directory. Okay. If you want to run any command, you are supposed to go to the bin directory. Okay. So I'm going to the bin directory and I'm going to run a command. There is a specific command for starting the service, which is Splunk start hyphen hyphen accept hyphen license license hyphen answer hyphen yes. If you write this command, what it says is you are starting off the service, you are accepting the license agreement, and you are answering whatever is questions in the license agreement. You are agreeing or approving to the license agreement. Okay. So when I do this, what is going to happen is it is going to ask me the username and the password. So let me run this. Okay. So it is, I think the command was not coming out to be correct. So I'll have to go down step by step. Okay. So okay, I think I have missed one of the slashes or something like that, due to which I'll have to scroll down through the complete license agreement and I'll have to agree to the license agreement. This part could have been omitted if I have used a correct command, but maybe I've missed out one of the slashes or something like that. This is where I have to hit enter so that it scrolls down to the end. As of now, if you can see, I've viewed 62% or 64% of the license agreement. I need to view the complete license agreement by hitting on enter. Okay. Once I view the complete license agreement, I can accept the license agreement and I can go ahead with the next steps on this part. So I have already viewed like 98%, 99%. Quickly, yes. If do you agree to the license agreement? Yes, I do agree to the license agreement. Okay. And I need to type the username and password. So what is the username? You can type any username. Okay. I'm just going to type admin. Okay. And you have to provide a password. So you can provide any password, whatever you want to. Okay. You can provide any password, whatever you want to. So I have confirmed the password as well. So what's going to happen is if you see that it is checking for some of the prerequisites. Okay. So by default, it is going to check all the prerequisites, whether all the port are opened, whether everything looks fine. And then it is going to wait for the web server to be available. Okay. This might take a few minutes, I would say. Sometimes it takes more than that as well, but it might take a few minutes. If you want to speed this process up, what I generally do is, I would not recommend, but what I generally do is I press Control C and I run it Splunk start again. So in that way, generally what happens is the process becomes easier, or I would say the web service gets available easily. Okay, this because I'm a little impatient on this part, so I generally end with Control C and I then again run the Splunk start command again. Okay, so let's wait for the web service to be available. Once the web service is available, I'm going to log into the Splunk in this AWS instance. Okay. So it's still taking time. Let's wait for some time. Okay. So by default, what is okay? Now my Splunk service web interface is up. If you see that this is the IP address on which this Splunk is hosted, I'm going to type top command so that this, if I don't use the top command here, what's going to happen is if my machine is idle for like 5 minutes or so, I would be logged out. But if I press the top command, it is not going to be idle. Okay. There's something that's running on the background. So I've just pressed the top command. Now I want my Splunk is installed and the service is already up and running. What I can do is now I can go to my EC2 instance. Okay. In this EC2 instance, I click on the running instances. In the running instance, I'm going to click on the checkbox and I'm going to copy this IP address. Okay. So I'm going to open a new tab, copy this IP address, and in this IP address, I'm going to click on to add port colon 8000. So I've told this part previously that colon 8000 is nothing but the web port. You need to add this colon 8000 so that Splunk instance, the web part or the user interface of Splunk instance comes up. Okay. So as you can see, that the user instance that the graphical user interface comes up, it is asking me for a user ID and password. I have to use the same user ID and password. So I used a user called admin. During the time of installation, if you remember, we added a user ID and password. So you have to remember that you are adding the same user ID and password and you are not missing out on it. Okay. So once you have added the user ID and password, you can see that the Splunk user interface will come up. Okay. Splunk user interface is going to come up. Okay. I would like to add one more thing. Okay. This will tell you more information about Splunk software. I'm okay with this. This is how the GUI of Splunk will look like. I can discuss more about the GUI in the upcoming sessions that we are going to have. Now, I would like to tell you one more thing on this part. What happens is these EC2 machines, the IP address that you see, okay, these IP address are dynamically associated. This is not a static IP address. Okay. So if I stop this machine at this point in time, okay, and I start this machine again, the IP address is going to change. That's why it's called a dynamic IP address. It's not a static IP address. Okay. And one more thing that is here is if I stop and start the machine, automatically my Splunk service will not be up. Okay. So let's say if I stop this machine and I start it off once again and I try to use Splunk what with the new public IP, I would not be able to go to the GUI of Splunk because Splunk is not enabled at boot start. So you want to make sure that whenever the service or whenever the instance is restarted, Splunk should automatically be up and running. It should not be like you are going to again start the Splunk service whenever this machine gets restarted. There should not be a manual intervention that you are going to log into this machine and start the Splunk service again and again because that is not what is required. So in order to make sure that even if the machine restarts, my Splunk service is up and running, there is a command that you need to type in Splunk. That command is called Splunk enable boot start. Okay. So I'm going to clear my screen once again. In the bin command only, I'm going to type Splunk enable boot hyphen start. So when you write this command, what happens is even if you restart your even if you restart your AWS instance, and if you try to use Splunk with the new IP address that would be assigned to that instance, it is going to run up. So basically, it does some configuration in the init script, and once this init script is configured properly, Splunk service will be automatically up and running whenever the instance is restarted. Whenever the instance come up back to life again, the Splunk service would be up and running as well. Okay, so this is what I wanted to share in today's video. So I hope that you have enjoyed it. So thank you for watching. Thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. I would be very happy. Thank you so much. Please like and subscribe. Thank you so much.